You're about to listen to the full interview with Steve Godfrey. Sections of it were originally included in our Beast of Bray Road episode. If you haven't listened to the full episode, we recommend you go listen. It'll provide context for this interview. Steve was married to Linda Godfrey for nearly 50 years. He told us about how Linda first learned about the story and the media interest that followed.
Hi, first off, I want to thank you for allowing me to be on your show. It was kind of an honor, I think, to have you reach out to me. My name's Steve Godfrey. I'm Linda Godfrey's husband for almost 50 years. Well, actually, it was 50 years. I grew up on a dairy farm near Milton, Wisconsin, which is about 35 miles south of the city of Madison, and just a little bit north of the Illinois-Wisconsin state line. There was a small dairy farm, and I actually attended a one-room schoolhouse till about 7th grade. And then I got to go to the big city of Milton, which is about 3,500 people. I went to school at Milton East, and Linda went to school at Milton West. I ended up graduating from Milton High School. I had a talent for science and for mathematics, so I was also an outdoorsman, so I liked the environment. I ended up going to college at one of the Wisconsin state schools and got a degree in civil engineering. My emphasis was environmental engineering and specifically water and wastewater treatment. I worked as a consultant for many years with helping communities and industries with water and wastewater treatment. So that's kind of my work background. I knew Linda in grade school and high school. We were friends, but not close or anything, but we started dating in my senior year, or in actually her senior year. We were classmates. After we graduated, I went to college at Platteville to get my engineering degree, and Linda went to University of Whitewater, which is just outside of Milton, and she started on a degree for art education and music. We actually got married my senior year when I was in college, and Linda had not quite graduated yet, but we lived at Platteville on campus, or as part of the campus community, for about a year and a half. And when I graduated from college, my first job was with a consulting firm in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And that's about an hour north of city of Milwaukee, right on Lake Michigan. We were there for about 3 years working, and Linda actually went to University of Oshkosh and got a degree in art education from there. When the opportunity came up, which was about 3 years later, we decided to take an offer to transfer to, actually was an engineering firm in Elkhorn, Wisconsin. And that was 25 miles from our hometown, and just seemed like a really good move to get back and be close to home, but not exactly home, if you know what I mean. It was just a nice area, rural area. And that's was kind of the start of how we got into Walworth County area.
And can you maybe tell me a little bit about Linda's career leading up to her time at the Week?
Well, Linda was always talented in art and vocal music. She was smart, outgoing. When she was in grade school, she told me that she would write plays to be performed, and she'd always write herself as the main character of the play. So that was kind of set the stage for, I think, her personality moving forward. She wrote for the school newspapers. When she got her art degree from UW Oshkosh, and she started working as a part-time art teacher for the rural schools around Walworth County. And she did that for a few years, and then she started doing quite a few different things. She for a time she was a librarian, worked at the local library. She was a commercial artist. Linda was very talented as an artist, and she actually had work that was featured in the New Yorker magazine at one time. So, I mean, she was very professional, and she enjoyed the art. She designed hundreds of rubber stamps and had a small business there. And then she started doing editorial cartoons, and she enjoyed that. She had met a very successful syndicated cartoonist who lived in Lake Geneva. She talked to him, and she thought that would be kind of fun to see if she could establish some kind of a cartoon strip she worked with him. She started doing editorial cartoons. She didn't really have an outlet for them, so she went to the Walworth County Week, which was a local newspaper that covered events. I think it actually was a free newspaper that pretty much went to every residence in Walworth County. And she approached them to see if they would be interested in her cartoons. And they said that they would, and I think they paid her $10 a week to produce a cartoon. She did that for several weeks. In fact, right here, I'm looking at in 1991, 92, and 93, Linda was actually in the Best Editorial Cartoonist of the Year book for basically the entire U.S. So she was talented at it. She was good at it. Maybe they upped her pay to $15, but she would hang around. She really didn't do a lot of writing per se at that time, but she was good at it, and she was hanging around. And at some point, the opportunity came up where the week was looking for someone to write some articles. So they asked Linda. She started doing a couple articles, and she was good as a reporter, and she ended up doing a weekly article that she called That's All She Wrote. Probably could have been syndicated nationally. It was so good. But she started doing that. She had a pretty good following of people looking forward to seeing her articles in the newspaper. And then just by chance, she happened to be in the office one day, and someone had been reporting on some sightings of what they called a werewolf. Everybody thought that was pretty wacky, and actually none of the writers for the paper wanted to take the story. They thought they're going to go see a bunch of crackpots, and Linda decided, well, it seemed pretty good, interesting to her. So she took that opportunity to write that story, and that pretty much changed her life.
So how did that story take shape for Linda? Like, where, from the very beginning to finding the first witnesses, like how did that story kind of play out for her in terms of writing it?
When she started, well, the first thing she came home and was telling me about kind of unusual story she was going to write. And she asked me if I knew where Bray Road was. And I said, well, yeah, I do know where Bray Road is. And in fact, that Bray Road was a little bit of a shortcut for me to take sometimes when I would go from Elkhorn to Racine. So I knew the road pretty well. And I will tell you that it was, and I remember telling Linda this. I said, yeah, I've been on this road, and it's just outside of Elkhorn, just outside the city. And I said, the one thing about it, I said, there's nothing special about the road. It's only about 2 miles long. But I always get kind of a creepy feeling when I drive down it. I said, I don't know what it is. And this is the honest God truth. It just seemed not right during the day or during the night. It was always just something kind of unusual about it. She contacted, I think it was 3 different witnesses who all reported within a short period of time, it's about maybe 6 months or so, they had seen something, they called it like an upright wolf. I think a lot of people know the story of Beast of Bray Road, but they gave these accounts, and Linda drew some sketches of what they said they saw. And I think most people have seen those sketches. She felt that they were very, very credible people, and she had no reason to think that they were making things up or telling tales, or really that they were impaired in any way. She also she didn't know what it was. Was it a physical entity? What was it? All she really knew, and the way she approached it, she says, I have several people who all claim to see the same thing. What it is, she didn't know. And that was kind of the start of the mystery for her. That's when she said, I really want to kind of research this and find out what it is. Nobody ever seems to get a picture of it. She started asking around, and our 2 sons both went to Elkhorn High School. And as it turns out, they had some of their classmates lived on Bray Road, and they had stories about, as little kids, seeing something off in the distance that started to walk towards them, and they turned and ran. And the more Linda dug into it, the more credibility for the whole sighting of a wolf man around Elkhorn, it kind of became more and more a real possibility that there is something. I think the turning point for Linda when she said, boy, this really is a story here, was when she got in touch with the animal control officer for Walworth County. And the first thing he did, she reached into a file drawer, he pulled out a file folder, and Linda said she looked at the label on it, and it said werewolf. That was the point she knew there was something there. That's a point she knew it was a story, and that started her career.
I'm curious to know what your reaction personally was when hearing the stories about a werewolf. Were you skeptical? Did you think that there was possibly something to it? Kind of like, what was your belief?
I told you, I'm an engineer, so we think a little differently, and we deal more in hard facts, provable theories, but also we know there's a lot of things that we don't see that are there. We don't see air, but we know it's there. We don't see gravity, but we know it's there. I was fairly open-minded to it. I've had a couple of experiences that were unexplained. So I guess I was open to it. And when she started telling me about the witnesses, and especially the animal control officer, that also convinced me that there's something here. I don't know what it is. Why is it that people seem to see the same things? To me, it was similar to UFOs. There's thousands of sightings, but no definitive proof. You got to kind of believe that something's going on for so many people to see the same thing, make the reports. People who have nothing, they aren't really trying to get attention. Many of them it's the exact opposite. They're afraid to say things to people. So when you put all that information together, there had to be something there. And so I was very supportive. Any way I could help her out, I would do that. But Linda was, she was kind of on her own. She never really asked a lot of people for help. She did her own research, and she did her own writing, and she just, it was kind of fascinating to watch her work.
Was she always interested in the paranormal, or was this kind of a new topic for her at the time?
I guess going back, even into her high school days, first off, her father was a science fiction advocate. That's what he read. He read those books. He also he had his own UFO sighting. So those things weren't new. I do remember Linda always she would tell a story about being in high school with some of her girlfriends. They were at some party, and somebody had one of the Ouija boards. They were using that Ouija board, and she said it frightened her so much what had happened there that she said, I don't want any part of that. I will never do that again. And she said, I think we were summoning up dark demons or something. She says it just wasn't right. I never want to take part in that activity again. So that was one thing. But then when she went to college at Whitewater, that's only 10 miles from Milton, where we grew up, she lived on campus, and she came across some information that at one point there was a school of witchcraft that was pretty well known that was in Whitewater. And in fact, she did more research on that. She was kind of fascinated with it, not so much because of she knew she didn't want to become any part of witchcraft or have anything to do with that, but she was fascinated by the story, fascinated that happened. In fact, Whitewater has a nickname that's called Second Salem, and a lot of people don't know that from this area, but it was because there was kind of a history of witchcraft in that area. So, like I say, she was interested and cautious. And when we lived in Sheboygan, she got kind of fascinated with there was a group It was more of a New Age movement that was about 20 miles away from Sheboygan. And she went to some of the presentations that they had. She found that some of that stuff very interesting, but then that turned into a point where she had a bad experience. We'll just put it that way with what she thought was dark spirits, and she just, I guess, left that place and didn't really look back. So she had those experiences. She was receptive, but she was kind of on the outside looking in and evaluating, I think, was kind of, and researching was the way she approached it.
After she published the article, there was a kind of a big media surge in terms of interest in the story. How did she handle that, and kind of what was it like following the publishing of that article?
Well, it was quite interesting when she wrote that article. She really didn't have any idea that it was going to get the attention that it got. And it was also kind of interesting because with that article, she put the label, The Beast of Bray Road, never knowing that it would be, I don't know if you want to call it iconic, nationally, internationally known. But she wrote the article, and locally it was kind of a big deal. The Walworth County Week sold more newspapers that week. And there was a follow-up article. They had almost a waiting list. They had to make a second run. So many people were interested in that story. And then the Associated Press picked it up. And I think that was a real eye-opener for me and for Linda, because the phone never quit ringing for days and weeks. And Linda was receiving calls from all over the country, all over the world, asking for interviews. And these were large radio stations in New York and Los Angeles and Chicago, Detroit, calls from the UK, Australia. Pretty much amazing. And the thing that amazed me was that Linda was never nervous about talking to any of these people. She would screen some of those people. It was like she was made to do this. She was made to do these interviews, and she was made to train for eventually doing podcasts and TV shows. She was so calm about it. She would organize them. Instead of being nervous, she would be finishing her breakfast and then pick up the phone and be talking to KLZ in Los Angeles and for a million listeners. And just, that was the way she approached it. And kind of one of the funny things I remember is she had a call with, I think it was the Detroit Free Press. Immediately after that was Houston or Dallas. And it was early in the morning, and she was upstairs, and she said, "Hey, can you bring me some tea and toast? Because I'm going to be on these radio shows." She says, "I want to prepare for that." I said, "Sure, I'll make that." And I walk upstairs. I figured she was going to be in her kind of makeshift office she had up there. Instead, she was in the bathroom, and I heard she was on the phone. She was talking, and I'm thinking, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to see when I walk in. But I go in the bathroom, and here's Linda taking a bubble bath. She's got the phone in one hand, and she's got a little table set up for her tea and the toast that I made for her. And she did 2 or 3 calls just taking a bubble bath. And just so amazingly calm and cool about it. And she's not like me. She doesn't stutter when she talks. She was just so smooth. It sounded like she was, very seasoned broadcaster.
So it sounds like she actually found this to be pretty fun. Like she enjoyed this. It wasn't a negative, overwhelming amount of attention. It was actually something she enjoyed.
Oh, exactly. She enjoyed. I don't know if it was so much the attention. She liked giving out the information. She liked, I think she did like having, I think, the positive attention from it, but she didn't bask in it. She didn't, that really wasn't a driving force for her. She just found it was interesting. She just liked to give information out. She liked to have people see, through her artwork, and I think in her teaching, she just liked to reach out to people and give them information, and she also had a lot of fun with it.
Did she face any challenges in reporting on the story, like either from the community in Elkhorn or the residents of Bray Road, like anything that maybe caused her trouble after the publishing of the story?
At the time she wrote this story, if you think about it, really the Bigfoot and Dogman and crypto was really not a mainstream topic like it is today. Today with the History Channel and all the different TV shows, people are really aware of the sightings. People had heard about UFOs, but again, that was just something you'd read an article about once in a while. The Loch Ness Monster, you would hear a little bit about that. But it certainly was nothing like today. So when this story broke, there were a lot of people who were really skeptical, and they thought she was kind of crazy for writing it, that she was making things up. She was trying to profit on it in some way, which I can tell you that never happened. And so it was very difficult for her. But then there were this small groups of people who would then start. I think probably the biggest thing that happened was now all of a sudden, with this notoriety locally, she was starting to get contacted by people who had similar sightings or knew someone who did. Sometimes they were 20 years previous, and people didn't want to report things because they thought they were afraid of ridicule. So she kind of became a clearinghouse for strange events, and I think that's what kind of really turned the corner for Linda to start looking at UFOs, and not just the Beast of Bray Road, the Dogman thing. She looked at paranormal things with the haunted houses. She got interested in that. She would be contacted by people, and chupacabras, and just lots of crazy things.
Eventually, she wrote a book, which is a really great book. I love how she inserts humor but also takes the topic seriously. Can you talk about the book, The Beast of Bray Road, and how she came about writing that and kind of what that experience was like?
Actually, The Beast of Bray Road was not the first book that Linda wrote. She had written a story about a true crime that occurred in the 1930s, I believe, in Whitewater, where a woman had poisoned her husband and actually tried to poison her kids. That was called The Poison Widow. And that was a kind of a local publishing company out of Madison did that book. So she did that book, and then she did a book for Barnes and Noble that was called Weird Wisconsin. And that actually was her first two books that she wrote. And then she decided, well, I guess I better write one on the Beast of Bray Road. So she took all her notes, and she had so many notes, and she had done so much research on connections, trying to explain the sightings. What is the Beast of Bray Road? Is it real? Is it not? And she had just tons and tons of notes and files and research that she had done at local libraries and talking to other witnesses, that it actually was kind of easy for her to put the book together, because she had so much material. It was just putting it in the right perspective and the right order to make sense out of it. And then Linda just did have a knack for humor. It was kind of a subtle humor that she would put in those books, but it made it, I think, more interesting and entertaining for people to read the books and enjoy them. And then it's still a pretty popular book.
Through all her research, because she did so much research on the topic and spoke to so many people, did she ever come to a conclusion in terms of what her belief of what people were seeing was? Did she ever feel sure of what it was, or was she still unsure at the end?
I think it's fair to say she was unsure at the end. She never came across anything that would answer all the questions. about the Beast of Bray Road and so many of those sightings, even if you want to throw Bigfoot in there. Why do people see these things? Why does nobody ever get a picture of them? Why do they seem to appear in certain spots and not other spots? How can they footprints start here and then end? And there were so many pieces to put together. Linda did a lot of research on. She studied quantum physics. She studied portals, wormholes, and just has dozens of books on that, trying to see if that was an answer. And I actually think she was leaning towards the phenomena or of the Beast of Bray Road and the Michigan Dog Man and the similar things was perhaps a portal, some kind of portal. That was the only thing that she really ever came up with that she said it really can explain everything. Something just seems to appear and seems to disappear, and somehow people can't get pictures of it. She says it's just kind of this interdimensional thing, but she says that the bad thing is I can't prove that either. So she just loved digging into the depths of the possibilities, and I would say that was kind of that was kind of the leading contender, we'll say, in her research.
After she wrote The Beast of Bray Road, she went on to write quite a few more books. Can you kind of talk about her legacy as a writer, even beyond The Beast of Bray Road?
She kind of expanded her interests from just she researched The Beast of Bray Road and then the Michigan Dog Man. It was kind of that genre that she wrote about, but then she became interested in so many other things through her research and through the calls that she got: sea monsters, chupacabras, wendigos, and she had such a body of research. She wrote Monsters Among Us, which is almost like a dictionary or encyclopedia of land, sea, and air monsters. And she explored in such detail every single aspect of the Mothman and the various sea monster sightings. And she knew the thing that was amazing to me is that Linda would be on a podcast and they would get on a conversation. She would pull out she said, well, that's very similar to in 1795, there was a sighting in Queensland, Scotland, that was very similar. And she knew all the details. She didn't have research in front of her, and she could pull out any of those things at any time. And she just had the amazing ability to remember the facts and the relationships and the similarities of all these things. And that was kind of evident in her writing. Linda was a very prolific writer. She could sit down and she would just pound through page after page after page. And it was just amazing that she was able to do that. And she would write and write and write, and she would write 20 pages in a day, and then she'd go back and she'd edit them, and she had very few edits. She just was able to put together the paragraphs and the thoughts and the sequences and the relationships in her mind, and just I think she would have the entire book kind of planned out ahead of time, and she'd just sit down and write it.
That's really impressive. I mean, do you think from watching her through this process, do you think there's any advice that other creatives could take, or any lessons other creatives or writers could take from Linda that might help them in their own writing and their own creation?
A lot of people don't realize how many different things Linda did in her lifetime. She actually did a couple of segments for the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction that was on how to write books. It's very interesting, and they came and filmed in our house, and she gave some pointers of how she would put together her notes and how she would storybook certain chapters out and talk about writer's block and all those things. So she was very, very good at that. But I think if we're really looking at the advice that I would give to writers or people, I guess, who are looking to research paranormal, is that Linda was she recognized that there were people from all different levels in just call it the paranormal community that she went to. There were people who were more like they were observers. They came to be entertained and came to learn a little bit, and they would maybe like to buy the souvenirs and those types of things, and that was fine. And Linda was very happy to do that. That was kind of her audience, the bigger audience. And then they were the people who were getting more interested in it, and they would do more research, and they would, maybe look locally to see what was of interest there, and maybe focus on the Beast of Bray Road or focus on some legend that was in their area, and that was fine. I know Linda was kind of in the super category of researchers, and she was so serious, and she did so much research in depth. That was what allowed her to be, I think, such a prolific writer, because she had all that knowledge. She didn't have to keep turning books open as she was writing. She knew what she was talking about. She knew the subject so well. It was easy for her, and she didn't make things up, out of the thin air just to take space. And also, she didn't take everything that she read at face value. She would do some research, and she would check those people out. And she had 300 books in her library, research books. And she had, I'd say 95% of them had at least 10 notes in them. When she read those, she researched it, and she would make notes of what she read. I would see her pick up a book, and she would go and she would just review that to keep that information fresh in her mind. And I remember asking her one time, I said, well, how come all these books have notes in them and this book doesn't? She says, well, I read that book and there was nothing of any value in it. And that's the way she was. And I think that the lesson to be learned there was, if you're really serious about writing and doing a good job and being honest and being similar to the way Linda approached things, you have to study those books and make your own decisions and decide what's the real useful information, what's the real research. And then also, I think that another thing that set Linda apart is she wasn't just interested in reporting and compiling other people's information and theories. She developed her own theories, and she did the research. I mentioned the quantum physics. I mean, how many people go to that depth to try to figure things out? She was good at that, and I think that's kind of really the important thing that she would probably tell people too, is don't be too limited in your research. In this area, she did her own research. She did stakeouts in the hayfields to see if they would see some lights or anything special at night. She would take walks in the Kettle Moraine area or different other forests, and she would visit haunted houses and things. And she was a kind of a boots on the ground. Let's go. I want to see for myself. And witnesses, if she could talk to them in person rather than call them on the phone, she would do that. And that was, I think, made things a little more real for her rather than just being a reporter.
Did she ever see anything that she thought was the Beast?
I don't think so much the Beast of Bray Road. She was on a couple of, like I say, she went out in the field quite a bit. There were a couple of times she felt that she may have seen a foot or something moving in the woods, but she was also a little bit careful to think, well, it could have been something else. She did actually, we lived for many years in the very southern end of the Kettle Moraine Forest was right next to our house. And she was walking down the street of our rural subdivision, and there was about a maybe 10-acre wooded area, and she's walking with one of her friends. There was a large branch. They looked down, and a large branch had a tree that was like a 8-inch diameter branch, very big branch, was moving and shaking, and there was no wind, and then it just broke and fell to the ground. And they all looked at it, and they got enough courage to go look at it, and they had no explanation for why that particular branch would have possibly fallen off that tree. She knew that there were strange things. Never did she see anything that was so definitive. She said, I saw it 10 feet away by the side of the road. But, I think she believes that there were things that she came across that certainly were unexplainable.
Do you remember any of the encounters that Linda gathered of the Beast of Bray Road that you might be able to recount, like a favorite or a favorite that she had?
Well, I think I was just the very original 3 or 4 reports that she talked to, that you've seen on TV, or that she wrote about, where they actually saw the creature kind of squatting by the side of the road eating a roadkill. I think that was the one who claimed that it scratched her car. Those, I think, were the 2 definitive ones that she talked about. There were a few other sightings and stories she had, like I had mentioned, the school kids who lived on Bray Road told very credible story about, they're seeing, as a group, there were several kids all say the same thing, that they saw. It looked like a wolf walking up. I don't think there's any one particular one that stands out. It's just kind of the whole collection of them that is what really gives it the credibility.
How do you think Linda would want to be remembered, professionally and personally?
She's very talented, and so many people who are listening to this broadcast probably know Linda pretty much only through her writings and her podcasts, and don't realize what kind of a person she was, and they don't realize the career that she had prior to that, the teaching and the artistry and the many friends she had. She was a tremendous wife and companion to me. We raised 2 wonderful children. We have 3 grandsons. She enjoyed so much being around the family. She was a very devout Christian, and she never let her Christian principles be compromised by the things that she wrote about and the things that she investigated. She always kept those separate. She was very, very proud of the quality of work that she did, and I think the fact that she didn't compromise her beliefs. She had so many friends. Especially later on, she had so many friends in the cryptozoology community that were very close to her, very dear to her, and she enjoyed those friendships. And I think she would like to be remembered more as a friend and companion, teacher, and just generally a good, friendly person.
If our listeners want to honor Linda's memory and help a cause that she was passionate about, is there anything that they can do to either donate or help a cause that maybe?
Most definitely. The first would be the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. And this is something most people don't realize, that Linda was diagnosed with breast cancer. She had a partial mastectomy in about 2004. And at that time, she was told that it was very serious, and they were very concerned if she was going to live. And it just so happened that there were some experimental treatments that she had access to, and basically that cured her from cancer. She was cancer-free after that. It kind of gave her a new lease on life, and she was so thankful that there were organizations like Breast Cancer Research Foundation that would provide the research to, I guess, save lives, give hope to people who otherwise didn't have hope. So that was the first one. And then the second one is the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. And I think a lot of people don't realize that in about 2009, Linda was diagnosed with Parkinson's. It was at that point, about that time, we noticed that she was having a little difficulty walking. She had kind of a funny walk, and then she was starting to get shaky hands, and it was that typical Parkinson's. And after that diagnosis, she got to the point, and this is 2009. She got to the point where she could no longer even type on her keyboard, and then she started taking some medications that they came out with, and that totally changed things. At that point, she was back. She was back on the keyboard, able to type. She was able to drive. She was able to travel, and she was able to do those things without people even knowing. So many of those TV shows that she was on, History Channel, occurred after that time and after 2009, and people didn't know. And that was because of the advances in the medications and the treatments for Parkinson's, and so that was very, very important for her. And I guess it's probably the primary one that she was interested in, and that she felt was really an important organization. But that's Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to share before we wrap up about Linda or about the story of the Beast of Bray Road?
One last thing, Linda, her last project, the one that she finished, was actually in 2020, I believe, right? It was right at the start of COVID. Linda became very interested in the large number of sightings of black cougars in the southwestern portion of Wisconsin, to the point where she had been corresponding and had met a couple times with a guy named Steve Stanek, who lived in Hillsboro, which was kind of the center of the area of all these sightings. And he was a reporter for the local newspaper, and he had over 100 sightings of these black cougars, which weren't even supposed to exist in nature, and that the Department of Natural Resources and national zoologists said didn't exist. But people had those sightings, and it was kind of like also one of those things that people saw them, but nobody would get pictures of them. So she became interested in that, and our youngest son, Nate, he graduated from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and he had a strong background in film production. Well, Linda and Nate and myself, to some extent, I was kind of the driver for the expedition, but we did some filming, and actually Linda produced a documentary on those sightings, and very interesting. That was kind of the last thing that she worked on, and actually it was so unfortunate. It came at a point in about 2020 that she was having more problems from her Parkinson's related issues. She wasn't able to really follow through with that, and also when COVID hit, it was like 2 days before the mask mandates came out was the day that we just finished up with the film festival launching the film. So you can imagine how detrimental that was to launching that project. But that was one of the favorite things, and I think that was something that she really wanted to follow up on. And that would have been her next big push, because she had been in contact with people who had similar circumstances in the UK, and there was a similar area in Maine. And that was kind of her next big adventure, I think, and unfortunately that just didn't come about. But that was I think the one project that would have been her next project. It would have been the next big thing. And I think the other thing that as I was just preparing for this show, putting some notes together, I got to thinking about the amazing situation back when Linda first got the assignment to follow up and check out these sightings on Bray Road. And I won't say reluctantly, by default, she was the one who went to do the story. If somebody else would have went, I doubt if it would have turned out the way that it turned out for Linda, because just because of her style. But she named the Beast of Bray Road. She did the research that kind of solidified it as a, its own crypto entity. And there's so many things, all these groups, and there's been many tributes to Linda. She was on so many shows talking about that. If she wouldn't have been there that one day, the whole Beast of Bray Road thing would still be a kind of an undiscovered entity. So it was just such an amazing coincidence how those things all kind of snowballed from that. Who knows what would have happened, but I just thought, I got to thinking how interesting that was.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on your favorite podcasting app. It helps get this content in front of more listeners, which means we can produce more episodes more often. Visit our website at www.strange-phenomenon.com for a full list of sources and more episodes. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at strange_phenom and on Facebook at Strange Phenomenon, all one word. Strange Phenomenon is hosted by Ray Tarara. It's written and produced by RJ Blake and Ray Tarara. Theme music by Tara Monk. Additional music provided by Sergey Cheremisinov.